Then can you hit the, on the computer behind you, can you hit the got it? And then let us, let's give thanks for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Adonai our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying Torah for its own sake. Baruch atah Adonai hamelech Torah le'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Okay. So we are at second book of Samuel, chapter 6. So now David is in control, right? David is now king of all of Israel. Okay. Okay. So David, what was one of the main reasons that the people wanted a king? If we remember back to the beginning of the book of Samuel, toward the beginning of the book of Samuel. Stability, but what's the instability come from? Enemies, right? You know, so the land of Israel was surrounded. Canaanites and Philistines were kind of ruled by city-states, different small city-states, and you know, it made things unstable for the Israelites because of raids and you know, people trying to conquer more territory and things like that. And actually, I was reading an article in Haaretz, it's an Israeli newspaper, about one archaeological. It was an archaeologist talking about it, but at the time of David, in the beginning of the Israeli monarchy, Egypt was not powerful, and the Assyrians have not yet risen, right? And so it left space for chaos in the middle of that places where the empires are, right? And so that's what we're talking about, right? Because you never really learned about the Egyptians and not the Assyrians yet, right? And then the Babylonians come after them. Okay. So chapter 6. Someone like to start.
I'll go.
Yeah.
David again assembled all the picked men of Israel, 30,000 strong. Then David and all the troops that were with him set out from Baalim, of Judah, to bring up from their ark of God, to which the name was attached, the name Lord of hosts enthroned on the cherubim.
Okay, so David's successful in war, and so what are they going to do now?
They're going to honor God.
They're going to honor God, but remember, so what's the ark of God? You know, what's the ark?
It's a portable host.
Well, it's the portable thing that holds. I mean, Jewish tradition, you know, later, but you find it in the Torah. But it holds the commandments. It holds, you know, the rabbis say a scroll of Torah. Holds the broken commandments. Holds Moses's staff, I think, is in there, and also a jar of man, the manna.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. And that's Jewish tradition says all that, right? But that's where God sits when God's presence is there, right? It's God's throne, right? But it's been, you know, it's kind of just been in storage, right? Because remember, the Philistines had it for a while, right? And now David's been successful. They got it back, and it's been in storage. Okay.
So they loaded the ark of God onto a new cart and conveyed it from the house of
Avinadav.
Yeah, which was on the hill. And Abinadab's sons, Uzzah and Ahio, guided the new cart.
Mm-hmm.
They covered it from Abinadab's house on the hill. Conveyed, I'm sorry. Uzzah walking alongside the ark of God, and Ahio walking in front of Ahio in front of the ark. Meanwhile, David and all of the house of Israel danced before the Lord to the sound of all kinds of cypress wood instruments, with lyres, harps, timbrels, sistrums, and cymbals.
Mm-hmm. right? So there's a big procession, right?
Procession.
Yeah.
Music.
Procession, like, you know, I always like to think like, you know, I went to school in New Orleans, and you've heard of, you know, New Orleans second line, right? So what it is you have, when you're having a procession to a funeral, the music is sad, and then after the funeral, it's like a happy music. That's why it's called the second line. It's the line after the funeral, right? And so, yeah, that's a, you know, a procession.
But when they came to the threshing floor of
Nahon.
Nahon, Uzzah reached out for the ark of God and grasped it, for the oxen had stumbled. The Lord was incensed that it was done, and God struck him down on the spot for his indiscretion, and he died there beside the ark of God.
Okay, stop.
Did the ox stumble, so that's why he reached for it?
Yeah, so this is the big mystery. This is actually you read these verses as the Haftarah during and during the Torah portion, when you read when Aaron's sons die in the sanctuary, right? Here's the big mystery. What did Uzzah do?
He must have grabbed
Keep it
something.
from
wrong.
falling off.
He touched the ark. Okay, but you think I
But
gotta
he was
touch the
wrong.
ark to like lift it onto the cart. Well, no, there's the
basically-
poles. There's poles that go through. So maybe
You
just
see the
touching the ark is dangerous. It's like, you know, you could think of like from the descriptions in the in the Torah, you know, the ark is kind of like the radio antenna that channels God's power, right? And maybe you can't touch it. Maybe that's it. Okay, what else?
But I'm sorry, how old is how old are the kids? They're the sons of Abinadab.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it means they're little. It just says sons. It doesn't say,
No, I see
right,
that.
yeah, it doesn't mean they're kids, yeah.
To me, this is,
But they were important. That's where it was stored. It was stored.
Yeah, it was stored at their house, yeah.
But the oxen had stumbled.
The oxen had stumbled, yeah, you think he was trying to help it?
He's trying to help.
Gary has his hand raised.
Yeah, just you're gonna hear the door.
to me, it's
Just a thought is, you know, this could be a question of faith.
Yeah. So,
This could be, this is God's ark,
mhm,
and you were told not to touch it or not to come into contact with it.
mhm.
And you know, faith is that God will intervene.
Right.
And
That
it will not.
Yeah.
It will not fall.
Yeah, that you know, trust that God will lift it up. That could be it, even if the oxen are falling. I think some commentary, I think I saw somewhere that like they overloaded the oxen, and this was God being kind to the oxen and let the oxen, you know, be okay. But it's a great mystery in Jewish tradition. Like let's look at a commentary. Okay.
This is a silly question, perhaps, but is this the same arc in Raiders of the Lost
Yeah,
Ark?
Right, exactly.
With their faces deterred.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
But here, God had a
Right.
plan and God want to cause the oxen to trip.
It doesn't say that, right? And so the you know, the ark, like we use this word ark that makes it sound like, you know, weird. Like when we use these archaic English words, we think, so like the word tabernacle, right? You know what the word tabernacle meant in Shakespearean English, or just tent,
Table.
tent or hut, right? So the word ark means container, right? And it's a different word than ark for Noah's ark. That's only used twice, for Noah's container and for Moses's container when his mom put him in the Nile as a baby, right? So the word ark here is aron, which is the same word we use where we hold the Torahs, but it means a closet, right? Or a container. It means okay. So but Gary, sorry, you had something else to say?
Yeah, it just raises the dilemma. You know, when do you act versus when do you have faith?
Right, yeah. So we'll look
You know,
at
how do you respond in those critical situations?
exactly. Good. And so let's look at, you know, Rashi's comments. You can see right here that there's a translation of it. I can put the Hebrew in a sec. That so Rashi he'll pick kind of the best of rabbinic tradition that he likes to explain it, right? Because the ox had made the ark slip, because the ox had made it slip and shaken it, and so it was. And then he's giving two translations in ancient translations Aramaic that said, because the ox made it slip. And Onkelos said his hand slips on the axe and his hand, so I'm not quite sure what that's referring to. And then, so let's see what, God was incensed, because of his mistake. He should have expounded a fortiori. That means like, should have thought of it already. The ark carried its own porters in the Ardennes. Isn't it all the more so that it is able to carry itself, right? So remember when he's talking about when the Israelites carried the ark across the Jordan River with Joshua, right? It was like the ark was kind of like floating right, through the river, right? It was able to do it. And so Uzzah should have had the faith that the ark would have righted itself and not interfered, right? I don't know if that's, let's see if we have.
That seems drastic, though.
Perhaps.
Somehow it seems to me it's instinctive to reach out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially since it's a precious object.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't.
But if it was so precious, why weren't they trying to rescue it for so long? Right, and I think we remember like, the Philistines captured it and the Israelites thought, well, we need the ark to win, and that's just turning the ark into an idol too, right? And that might be part of it too.
Is there an element of, I just thought about, if you see the face of God, you die.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that could be part of that.
And here you were told after you're getting too close
Mhm,
to
mhm.
God, and
It could be. It could have been like he's not a priest, or he's not ritually pure, like something like that. But it's been a mystery for Jewish tradition for a long time. What was Uzzah's sin?
I never heard that. If you see the face of God,
You can. When people see in the Torah, when people witness the presence of God, they get very scared, and God has to reassure them. So it seems like it's only sometimes that God can make you not die when you like get too close, right? But yeah, only the high priest was able to go up to the ark one day of the year, and that was on Yom Kippur, right?
that's
When it was in the temple.
It was even Moses on Mount Sinai, God said, if you
Yeah,
see my
so-
face, you would die.
Right, so what does the face mean? And that's a lot of, but, right, and so it's a big mystery what Uzzah's sin was. Maybe he just got crushed by the ark, I don't know, or crushed by an ox, who knows, so David, so let's see what David does.
What does
Yeah.
the word incensed mean? The
Mad.
Lord was incensed.
That it got angry. It's off like God. It says God's nostrils flared. That's what it is.
Because I'm looking at it from a different perspective. He kills him.
Yeah.
but brings him closer to God because now he's dead and part of.
Yeah, that's not the biblical mindset though. That's that's yeah. I mean, never say that. I've said this many a time. Never say that at a shiva when you go to someone and say, Jews don't generally say it, but never say he's with God now. Never say that. But the Bible would never say that. Because like there's a song in Hallel, the dead can't praise God. When you're dead, you're far from God, right? When you're alive is when you could be near God, right?
But it is, I mean, God seems to kill some of the, what seemingly are meritorious people.
I don't know when is God in the Bible.
I forget the details.
People die.
When he struck the two people dead.
Oh, yeah, so Nadav and Avihu, right? The Aaron's sons, were they meritorious? I don't know, like Jewish tradition comes up with all these ways that they weren't meritorious, right?
well, it doesn't kind of matter either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter either way, we all die.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, and so does that mean? Does that mean that God's punishing us? I don't know, that's like, the Bible has to works that out in different ways, right?
That's why I wondered what incensed was.
Yeah, so here it does seem like a punishment.
So truly angry.
Yeah.
You want to read the last verse of this one?
Yeah,
They
go ahead.
probably got stepped on by the ox and they just.
Yeah, maybe.
What happened?
And that's how that was interpreted, maybe, yeah. But even if you got stepped on by the ox, that could have been seen as punishment for doing something, yeah. So, so someone else pick up verse 8. So now we're gonna see what David did.
David was distressed because the Lord had inflicted a breach upon Uzzah, and that place was named Perez Uzzah, as it is still called.
Right, so parents, I mean, like the bursting forth of Uzzah.
David was afraid of the Lord that day. He said, "How can I let the ark of the Lord come to me?" So David would not bring the ark of the Lord to his place in the city of David. Instead, David diverted it to the house of Obed Edom, the Gittite.
Right, so so how is David interpreting this?
That's dangerous. I want to be no part
Well,
of that.
it could be that this is dangerous, or what else?
That God is angry.
God's angry, I'm not worthy of having the ark in my house.
Right.
That could be it too. Give it to this other guy who, it's not clear if he's an Israelite at all, maybe not, right? But put it back in storage. But it could be like, it could be, yes, it's dangerous, but I'm also maybe reading that David thinks maybe God's mad at me, right? I'm not sure.
The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed Edom, the Gittite, 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed Edom and his whole household. It was reported to King David, "The Lord has blessed Obed Edom's house and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God." Thereupon David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed Edom to the city of David amid rejoicing. And when the bearers of the ark of the Lord had moved forward 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox, a fatling. David whirled with all his might before the Lord. David was girt with a linen ephod.
Why is it talking about David's underwear?
Because it becomes important later.
Because it becomes important later, but he was whirling around and people didn't wear pants. Right? Everybody wore, tunics, right? So it's bringing up what's his underwear, right?
Once again, David's wardrobe
Yeah,
makes the,
Well, right, so we've talked a lot about clothes for a long time. Remember Saul losing his armor, Saul getting his clothes cut, Saul being naked at one point, right? And so, what you're wearing becomes a symbol for kingship here, right? But what's David doing?
wearing underwear.
Right, but whirling, right? So again, like we're using too big of a word, but he's dancing in ecstasy, right? He's dancing in ecstasy with the people, right?
Wasn't-
Right.
But wasn't the ephod?
Right, so what does the ephod mean here, right? I think it's I think it means girt. Let's see, like, the underwear, right? But ephod, he's not wearing.
You want me to read what Aldo?
Yeah, sure.
A short garment tied around the hips or waist.
Mhm.
And so David whirling and leaping might easily have exposed himself,
Yeah.
as Michal will bitterly observe.
Right, so it seems like, so he's saying, like, everybody wears a tunic and David's wearing some kind of belt that cinches it in, so then it makes it easier for the skirt to flap up, right? Yeah. But it's not the ephod that the priests wear that has some kind of prophecy power to it, right? Yeah,
It's considered like one of the good kings, and I
the
guess,
only good king, not the only, but the best king, yeah.
I don't know, I just feel like,
There's a lot of problems.
I don't want the Tark until, okay, now you got something good from it, so now I'm gonna, it's like everything
Right.
he does.
Yeah, so
Looks
remember,
out for himself, not for.
yes, and everything that David does, I think we've discussed, can be read either way. Is David only looking out for himself? Or was David looking out for his men? We could, like, the writer, the compiler of the books of Samuel never spells out his judgment of David when it comes to what David does. We can always read it both ways, right? Is David just scared for himself, or was he trying to see, does God actually want this, right? Again, with his feud with Saul, he never tells his people to kill Saul's people. They do, which it was good for David that they did, but he never says to do that, right? And so, like, David can always be read as right. Is he only
In
for
this
himself,
case,
or is he for
In
others?
this case, the ark was in Obed Edom,
Yeah.
whatever it was, and it was doing great there, and
Yeah.
everything was going good.
Right. So
So
David
why should he then go bring it up here?
David saw that as a sign to then bring it back among the people, right? Not to keep it in storage anymore, to bring it back among the people.
He doesn't sacrifice the oxen the trip, it's just an oxen. Is that correct?
Yeah, an ox that wasn't pulling the ark, it was, an ox. But think of it, when you sacrifice an ox, that's like the biggest thing you could sacrifice. The ox was the most expensive piece of machinery, I'll say it that way, that you can own, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a big deal there.
Yeah,
It wasn't to bring it just back to the people, as I read it, that it's gonna enhance his standing.
so then you can read it both ways.
No.
David is the king who brings back God's
That's
throne and establishes it in this new city of Jerusalem. Right?
Right.
But
Yeah,
the
they
new
make
city of
sure, okay.
Jerusalem is for all the people, right?
Okay.
And so David is dancing with the people. We're gonna see it in
Yeah,
a second. David the populace in a second, right? I shouldn't say populace has a, how we use it today, but David with the people in a second, right? Okay. So he, it's pointing out that you can see under his skirt.
Thus David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts and with blasts of the horn.
Right, of the shofar, right? Okay, so now we're changing the scene a bit, okay?
As the ark,
But, so here, I want someone else to read now, because it's a new scene,
new scene,
new scene, okay?
it's okay.
Okay, and so, we're gonna be reintroduced to Michal. Who was Michal?
Saul's daughter, David's wife.
Saul's daughter, David's wife, who Saul made divorce David and gave him to, the other guy. After the fall of the house of Saul, what was something David said? It was a demand for Saul's general Avner to come onto his side. What was David's demand?
Give Michal back.
I want Michal back.
Right. Not the.
Why did David want Michal back? Maybe we could read it both ways.
To unite the kingdom,
Unite the kingdoms.
and because he liked Michal.
Maybe he liked Michal.
Bearer of children, like lineage.
Okay, but we're gonna see about children in a second. But if Michal still lived with another husband, who would her babies be part of? House of Saul. David gonna have babies with Michal? Well, we're gonna see.
Okay.
As the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and whirling before the Lord, and she despised him for it.
Right, so Michal, remember, when they're first meeting each other, we learned that she loved David, right? She helped him escape from her dad, right? At her own peril, right? Yeah.
They brought in the ark of the Lord and set it up in its place inside the tent, which David had pitched for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord. When David finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And he distributed among all the people, the entire multitude of Israel, men and women alike, to each a loaf of bread, a cake made in a pan, and a raisin cake. And all the people left for their homes. David went home to greet his household, and Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "Didn't the king of Israel do himself honor today, exposing himself today in the sight of the slave girls of his subjects, as one of the riffraff might expose himself?"
Remember, so here's Michal, she was not watching this through the window, right? Now, she's been taken from her husband who loved her, right? Even though she did love David, we don't know if she grew fond of her husband, but her husband, remember that the saddest scene in the Bible of him weeping and them just taking her, right? And maybe she feels like a captive in the palace, right? And so what does she say to him?
Look at how you're acting, being
Yeah.
a disgrace to the.
Yeah,
She's just jealous. I mean, maybe it could
You
be that
think
she
not
loves
worthy
him,
of the
she's
crown.
jealous.
not worthy of the crown, but
I mean, here she's like, don't. Yeah, she doesn't want other women to see his underwear.
maybe, although he had a bunch of wives. He has a bunch of wives, but yeah,
She was putting him down.
Accusing him of behaving in a very boorish,
yeah,
low class sort
Yeah.
of way.
Non-Jewish
yeah.
way.
Act like a king, don't act like a.
She's the king's daughter, whereas he is now demonstrated as no more than riffraff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
And she comes from royalty and he doesn't.
yeah,
And
Right.
she was.
although it's only been one generation of royalty, but yes, exactly,
That's not
yeah.
gonna change how she feels.
Yeah, right.
She had the agency to speak out against him.
Right, remember, so women, when we have the women, when they have the moments of agency in this story, they grasp the power, right? Now, it's few and far between, but like, it's very important when the powerful women do something here. Usually David listens to them, right? We learned that with Abigail, before. We'll see with Bathsheba at the end of the story. But here is not the case, right?
David answered Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me instead of your father and all his family and appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will dance before the Lord and dishonor myself even more and be low in my own esteem. But among the slave girls that you speak of, I will be honored." So to her dying day, Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children.
Oh,
Now, you could read again with David, is this just because he didn't like her? Or is this now a strategy to not allow the house of Saul to have any offspring? Right?
It's
Probably
interesting,
yes.
it was a book, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was 9 Essential Things I've Learned, but Harold Kushner wrote in one of the things that this was the saddest moment in the Bible because they had a fight, they couldn't reconcile, they were never together again.
Yep.
And that this, he said, this is the saddest thing that in everything, because if you can't reconcile, if you can't go by it, if you just say, you know what, you insulted me, that's it, I'm never talking to you again.
Yeah.
And that led to the rest of her life being miserable, and
Yeah.
that,
Didn't
you
say
know,
miserable,
it's
said
really
have
a
children.
commentary on relationships.
Right, but now, yes,
Then-
but she didn't have children
Misery.
means she's alone.
Yeah,
Like
so I
David
guess-
never came to
So
her.
politically, it was better for him to do this and to
Yeah,
kill her.
but like he pulled her away from her husband where he
So no
loved
heirs,
her.
no heirs.
And so now she's got nobody and she's trapped. Yeah, yeah. So it's not just it's personal relationships, which is feels so harsh, and it's political relationships, which it's like so we say they're Machiavellian, right? And so yeah.
So shrewd, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so he brought, yes, okay, because he
No.
was so popular, I guess, among her. people,
May or at least there might be people there who are,
She has, her kids would have.
if they ever get mad at David, they'll see her kids and he wants to choose which of his kids to be the king, right?
Maybe he was afraid of a powerful woman,
Yeah.
mate.
That's true.
Because it was
Mhm.
for speaking.
Where does David see his power from right now? Not from being connected to Michal anymore and Saul. Where does his power come from now?
The populous kind of.
The people, he's the populace right now, yeah. The people who are dancing with him.
well, then it certainly sounds like he cannot tolerate any criticism, whatever.
Well, we'll see that he will tolerate
Yeah.
criticism, right? We'll see soon that he'll tolerate criticism and from women too, right? And because remember, we learned from one of his wives, Abigail, who gave him good criticism, and he took that, and we'll see at the end of the story from Bathsheba, and he'll take that, but and he'll take criticism from his prophet Nathan, but what's David's politics right now is I have all the people on my side, I don't need you, right?
Maybe the first true hurt in love is the deepest cut.
Yeah, yeah.
She hurt him and he.
Right,
back at
she
it.
saved his life all those years ago, She, and she loved him, it said, right, and her brother loved him, it said, and her brother's dead, and she's now a prisoner. Yeah, a prisoner. Yeah. Okay. So, that's one of the saddest parts of that, yeah, okay. So now, let's keep going.
When the king was settled in his.
Sorry.
Okay,
That's
what I
Yeah, it's not open.
When the king was settled in his palace and the Lord had granted him safety from all the enemies around him, the king said to the prophet Nathan, "Here I am dwelling in a house of cedar, while the ark of the Lord abides in a tent." Nathan said to the king, "Go and do whatever you have in mind, for the Lord is with you." But that same night, the word of the Lord came to Nathan, "Go and say to my servant David, thus said the Lord, are you the one to build a house for me to dwell in? From the day that I brought the people of Israel out of Egypt to this day, I have not dwelt in a house, but have moved about in tent and tabernacle. As I moved about wherever the Israelites went, Did I ever reproach any of the tribal leaders whom I appointed to care for my people Israel? Why have you not built me a house of cedar? Further, say thus to my servant David, thus said the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pasture, from following the flock, to be ruler of my people Israel. And I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut down all your enemies before you. Moreover, I will give you great renown, like that of the greatest men on earth. I will establish a home for my people Israel, and will plant them firm, so that they shall dwell secure, and shall tremble no more. Evil men shall not oppress them any more as in the past, ever since I appointed chieftains over my people Israel. I will give you safety from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that he, the Lord, will establish a house for you. When your days are done and you lie with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, one of your own issue, and I will establish his kingship. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish his royal throne forever.
Okay, so stop for a second. So
Why is he saying all this stuff to Nathan instead of talking to David?
Nathan's the prophet. Nathan's the one who can talk to God.
in
David-
between, huh?
Yeah,
God.
right. So let's set the scene. So David's having a conversation with Nathan, and what's David say? I want to do what?
I wanna build a house for the Lord.
I want to build a temple, right? So the word is bite, right? I want to build a house, right? And Nathan's like, okay, but then Nathan has a dream or, has some kind of vision of God and says, wait, let's think about this for a second. And so what's God say?
That his offspring will build the house.
The offspring. But I will build God says, I'll build a house for you, a bite, which means a dynasty also, right?
Okay.
Right? I'll build a dynasty for you. And then your offspring will build this house for me. But first God says, what do I need a house for?
I've done it all this time, why now?
Why now? Yeah. So think about it. Are you building a house for me because that's glorifying you, or is that for me? Right? I think that's what God's kind of saying too, right?
What's your motive?
What's that?
What's your motive? for
Right.
doing
Yeah,
this?
maybe.
I guess from the historical point of view, there's, like, we think of God being everywhere
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But they
Well, they
definitely had this localized, because.
kind of.
Yeah.
So it seems like the Israelites believed that God could be everywhere, right? And God was able to like pierce into the world at any point. But if you had a temple, that would be the more concentrated point where God could be, right? So the people around them had their pantheon of gods,
Right.
but they had, like Baal, which was, chief Canaanite god, but they had the Baal here. Baal was here, and Baal was here, and Baal was there. Just like, I'll say the Catholics today, Our Lady of, Fatima, Our Lady of wherever. These were different manifestations of Mary in different places, right? The Israelites don't have that. Well, you can kind of read that in the Bible in some places. You had God at Bethel and God at wherever, but like the Israelites' God is a universal God. And yet the temple in Jerusalem is where you can most feel God's presence, but it doesn't mean that God is not in other places. For the Bible's view of the Canaanites was you can only access God in this idol here,
Right.
even though it was the same God in this idol as it was in the other idol there, right?
It's a little tension with idolatry, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a question of geography and God is thinking, this is not the place, it's not permanent yet,
Well, I think,
maybe. it's a
yes,
precursor.
maybe, but I think it's more a question of humility too, I think. But yeah, let me think about it. I think geography also, God doesn't need to be localized, except that we already had the Bible where they carried the Mishkan with them.
But they might be still in a path of
Right,
like
so,
40 years.
yeah, right, so maybe God's like, I'm not ready to settle down yet. Yeah. So here, Amy Herberter writes online, the possible that this section was added later as an explanation of why David didn't use his power to build a temple. Yeah, probably, maybe, yeah, that's what.
Alder says that. too.
Yeah. So that was like the later historian, the later writers had to say, why did Solomon build it and not David?
Right.
Maybe,
Which is
but
the intersection I'm always fascinated with between theology and history.
yeah,
And the theology, though, built off that history is.
right. And we're not done yet with God's speech to learn more, but yeah.
It could also be that David wanted a house.
Yeah.
And it might be seen as
Ah.
unworthy to build yourself a palace while God's in a tent.
Well, that's what he says at the beginning, right? I have this palace with cedar wood, right? And God doesn't. Yeah, God's been in storage.
It's really unseemly to
Yeah.
build yourself this
Mm.
extravagant palace.
Mm.
While the Holy of Holies
Mhm.
is on
Right.
is being
That's,
pulled
that's
around by a
David's point,
ox.
Yeah.
But God is, I thought, also saying here, for all these years, I've moved around and dwelled in tents and tabernacles. And I've never complained or criticized
right.
anybody for not building me
Right.
a cedar,
Yeah.
structure.
Right, but David wants
So it's got,
the extravagance.
is God being passive aggressive? I don't need, I'll sleep on the couch. Don't worry, I don't need your bed.
the Jewish mother.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Rabbi, I don't know if it's just coming up here. I always seem to remember somewhere from Hebrew school that he said Solomon should do it because David was a man of war and
Yeah,
Solomon was a man of
that's-
peace.
This Chronicles.
Yeah, that I think that's the Chronicles reading of it. And so Chronicles is the book at the end of the Hebrew Bible that retells the story, but with a different ideology. But you could read that into it here, right? But we don't know Solomon, like it doesn't name Solomon, we don't know Solomon yet, just say one of David's children. But in the dynasty, God is building David a house, but this is a different kind of house. This is a dynasty, right? Okay. So here, I'll finish off the chapter. So I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name. This is, a future son. And I will establish his royal throne forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. When he does wrong, I will chastise him with the rod of mortals and the blows of humankind. But I will never withdraw my favor from him as I withdrew it from Saul, whom I removed to make room for you. Your house and your kingship shall ever be secure before you. Your house being your dynasty, right? The Beit Chai. Your throne shall be established forever. Nathan spoke to David in accordance with all these words and all this prophecy. Then King David came and sat before God and said, "What am I, O sovereign God, and what is my family, that you have brought me thus far?" Remember, David always has moments of piety, right? And is it cynical or is it true? Like, we never know. But like, David has this relationship with God and wants to do what's right by God, it seems. Yet even this, O sovereign God, has seemed too little to you. For you have spoken of your servant's house also for the future. May that be the law for the people, O sovereign God. What more can David say to you? You know your servant, O sovereign God. For your word's sake and your own accord, you have wrought this great thing and made it known to your servant. You are great indeed, O sovereign God. There is none like you, and there is no other God but you, as we have always heard. And who is like your people Israel, a unique nation on earth, whom God went and redeemed as a covenanted people, thus winning renown and doing great marvelous deeds for them and for your land, driving out nations and their gods before your people, whom you redeemed from yourself from Egypt. You have established your people Israel and your very own people forever, and you, Eternal One, have become their God. And now, Eternal God, fulfill your promise to your servant and his house forever, and do as you promised. May your name be glorified forever, that men will say, God of hosts is God over Israel, and may the house of your servant David be established before you. Before you, O God of hosts, the God of Israel, have revealed to your servant that you will build a house for him. Your servant has ventured to offer this prayer to you. And now, O sovereign God, you are God, and your words will surely come true, and you have made this gracious promise to your servant. Be pleased, therefore, to bless your servant's house, that it abide before you forever. For you, O God, have spoken. May your servant's house be blessed forever by your blessing. Right? And so here's how we get the idea of the Davidic dynasty is everlasting, right? Even though it fell, it will be everlasting, right? That's the messianic idea, the seed of messianism in Judaism right there in these verses, right? Okay.
That's God telling him no matter what you do, even if you were to do something not good, it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna strike you down like I did Saul and his family. I'm gonna leave you, which is kind of a.
Right. So is this some later editor putting that in there? So, we see kind of monarchical threads in here and anti-monarchical threads. Here's definitely a pro House of David thread. Right?
I mean, you just say, if they stray, I'm gonna punish them.
Yeah.
It's what he's saying, they'll never abandon them. You
Yeah.
still have to follow the rules.
You still have to follow.
Well,
God,
they-
God has
That's how they
come
go.
around to monarchy though.
Right, but that's the point, they never promise Saul eternal, right, he's promising David that however much they screw up, I might screw him in that, I might screw them up in that generation.
Yeah.
Right, I'm never gonna take it out, kind of thing.
Okay, so let's, as we've done the last few weeks, let's thank God for the food that we ate, so Birkat Hamazon. Mine should be one of the packets you have. Okay, so on Shabbat and holidays, we start with this Psalm 126. Shir Hamalot B'Shuv Adonai Et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kechom Az Yimale Sofinu Ushonenu Rina Az Yomru Bagoyim Higil Adonai Lasot Melech Higil Adonai Lasot Imanu Hayinu Tzemechim Shuba Adonai Et Shivitenu Kafikim Baneged Hazori Bedima Berina Yitzoru Halo Yelehu Baho No Se Meshech Hazara Bo Yavo Yavo Berina No Se Alubota. Oh, I have to say, this song, Psalm 126, not the tune that we were singing, another tune was almost the Israeli national anthem, right? So it was like in the running with Hatikva, right? So now, when we do Birkat Hamazon, when you have more than 3 people, there's an introduction that we say, Chaverai v'chaverot nevarech, friends, let's praise, and you say on the next page, Yehi Shem Adonai nevarach me'atav yad olam bershut ha'chevra nevarech Eloheinu shalchanu mishalo. Baruch Eloheinu shalchanu mishalo u'tubo chayinu Baruch hu u'baruch shemo. First blessing, Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Kiveltan ufarnes lako, umetiv lako, umechim mazon, le'ochod riotav Hashem bara, Baruch Adonai. We praise you, O God, source of food for all who live. Part of the second blessing, next page. Kakatu v'yachata v'savata v'berachta et Adonai Elohecha ha'aretz ha'tova asher natan lach baruch atah Adonai ha'aretz v'ya'ah. And so we praise you, O God, for the earth for its sustenance. This is part of the third blessing, which I think we especially need now. Uvenei Yerushalayim Yirah-Kodesh b'mehera v'yameinu Baruch atah Adonai B'nei Barachman Yerushalayim. Amen. We praise you, Adonai, in compassion you rebuild Jerusalem. Harachman Yivoch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed. Harachman Yitzrach B'shamayim u'ba'aretz. You say, Amen. Harachaman v'yishlach b'rakav b'bayit hazeh v'al shulchan zeh shalchanu alav. You say, Harachaman v'yishlach lanu et Eliyahu hanavi b'kol hakol tzivatzeh lanu b'tzorot tovot Yeshuot v'nevamot. Amen. Harachaman v'yanpilenu yom shekulo Shabbat u'mnucha l'chayei ha'olamim. Ose shalom bimroma, Yaseh shalom, Hallelujah, Kol Yisrael ve'imeru Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. May Adonai grant strength to our people, may Adonai bless our people with peace. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
I came in here to say that last night, in a most unexpected, crazy turn of events, I was able to make contact with some Israelis and I put my sister on an emergency flight and I'm freaking out. So everybody pray that she'll land safely. And it's like a 3-part thing and it's like with the Air Force, I don't know what's happening. So just pray. It was like totally unexpected. So I need a lot of prayers into the ether.
Can you hear it?
See you all later.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
I invite you all to
Jewish
come.
camps, it's